My name's Peter Stonham, and as you'll pick up as we go forward, I'm pretty heavily involved in this project. I think quite a lot of the people who've come and joined us this afternoon are aware of quite a bit about what we're doing, but I'll just do a very brief introduction. This Civic Revival project has been 10 or 20 years in the making. Richard Walker and I had many conversations when we were out and about walking around cities, towns and villages, trying to pick up on what works and what doesn't in terms of them being good places to live, nice feelings about the area, proud people living there, and other elements of what we would call civic positivity. It's very hard to identify what they are if you look for them, because they vary so much, but there are common threads, and that's often individual or small collective citizen action to get something done or to be positive about some element of the area and to take it into their own hands to improve things or preserve things that are important. We did quite a bit of work in the last 2 or 3 months over how you might codify this kind of thinking, and we've come up with our 5-element hexagram, which you'll see shortly, and Richard will explain more about how we see different elements of civic positivity coming together. And I think what we believe is our USP is that we try to connect 5 different fields, and there may be more, rather than concentrating on any one of them. There's a lot of people concentrate on placemaking or on changing economic models or how we can involve communities in democratic decision making. But to put the whole group together is in my experience, rather unusual, and that seems to be our USP. And then luckily, things came together quite propitiously. Richard and I have been wanting to do something like this for a long time. I came into a little bit of unexpected funding, so was able to put that into the beginning of the project. Richard had the chance to take a year's sabbatical from his day job at the Department for Transport and has decided to do 2 new things through the year, and one of them is Civic Revival as part of his work. And then we signed up 4 or 5 co-conspirators to give us a feeling of momentum and of substance, and they're all here today, and you'll hear from each of them later just how they've contributed to getting this all off the ground. Really, that's all I need to say. What will happen next is that Richard will introduce more about what we're doing and what we're all about. I'll expand on a couple of areas in that. You'll meet the other trustees, and then we'll have a discussion chaired by what I can only describe as the perfect person to do this kind of thing for us, who's Nick Waits, who is the guru of consultation and community inclusive planning. And if he can't facilitate a discussion, I don't know who can. So without further ado, I'll let Richard take the reins now.
Okay, hi everybody, can you see me? I'm assuming you can see me. Yes, thanks very much indeed for that, Peter. And I mean, just on a personal note, you know, many thanks indeed to Peter for supporting this attempt to do something interesting this year. And I'm also, there has been a small amount of financial support put in by Department for Transport, which I'm also extremely grateful for. And we are hoping that we can extend it into a 2nd year, and I'll be able to do this throughout the whole of 2021 as well as the whole of 2020. But that's in the future. And what I want to do now is quite quickly just run you through. Let me just share my screen. This is our pitch, which I hope somebody will signal if you can't see this. But this is a kind of an attempt to introduce you to the project. So I'll crack on through it. So now is the time for Civic Revival. And when we started this, we weren't expecting COVID and the dramatic changes that the economic changes that the COVID is going to produce to be a context for what we're doing, but it now is. And I think we're going to take the attitude that that makes our approach even more timely. So what I'm going to try and talk you through is our attempts to crystallize what our mission is. We're kind of launching the website today, so I'm going to talk you through the bits of the website. I'm going to talk to you about our concept of kindred spirits and you know how you guys can get involved. The picture that I'm showing there, which was quite interesting when we were talking about this with Peter, so I can't remember when it was, in February or something like this, was saying what film sums up what we're trying to do with respect to people who are doing stuff in their community to make their place a better place. And we ended up with one of my favourite films anyway, which is Bill Forsyth's Local Hero, where one of the fun things about it, I don't know if you don't know the film, it's a little Scottish fishing village which is going to be destroyed by an oil terminal, but due to the wiles of the locals, the American oilman Burt Lancaster ends up funding a research station. And I mean, it's just a really great film, but who the local hero is never quite clear. There's actually half a dozen or more people who could be the local hero. They're all part of the thing that makes a thing that could have ruined this place into a thing that has made this place better and secured its future. So that's why we use that term. But anyway, so Peter's mentioned what we call our 5 key civic building blocks, and I'm going to try and speed up and zoom through these. But hopefully that everybody who gets involved with us will see that they relate to one or more of these. So, and then our role is to help connect them. And so we're helping to connect people and helping to connect these kind of ways of approaching the issue of making our places better. So the first one is what we've called celebrating well-designed and well-curated places. And I just wanted to use this slide to just dig into that term we're using, curated. I mean, a lot of people who come at this from town planning, from what we call placemaking, a development industry, are in the business of producing new places. But you know, over 95% of our built environment that we interact with is already built. So, well, 100% is built now, but you know, where most of us live is not in new developments; it's in places that are already there and need curating. And of course, that's where safeguarding our heritage and making the most of our heritage really comes in. And I'm not going to, each of these pictures has a meaning, but I'm not going to go through in great detail, but the generic point that they're trying to pick up. So the bottom left is Hustlergate in Bradford. And the building that looks like a Venetian palazzo is actually Waterstone's bookshop. But the rest of that street is completely vacant. Lloyds Bank have left, and the Bradford city centre is in big trouble. And although that streetscape looks really healthy, it isn't really. And you've got a city centre there that needs curating, and wonderful steps have been taken in Bradford by people pursuing new economic models to do precisely that. The middle couple of pictures are Stoke-on-Trent. Those were taken at a control shift conference come mega gathering that was held there last year. And that's just like, you know, a typical kind of urban environment in what we supposedly call left behind places. And you can see just the amount of quality that's there, and you know, these places can come back and be amazing. I mean, I personally would think that old pottery there with the pot kiln and the factory building, they can be brought back to life in a fantastic way. But it's not just about left behind places, it's about places that are supposedly doing well. The right hand picture is Knutsford, and it's Greg Marsden who drew this picture to my attention. That's one of the most prosperous, it's only about 20 minutes away from Stoke. It's one of the most prosperous places in Cheshire, one of our most prosperous counties, but they're not curating that environment particularly well in traffic terms. So that's where I get angry as a transport planner. But anyway, so that's what we're talking about in terms of well-designed, curated places. And there's a lot more in that vein, but I'll leave it there. Now, I just wanted to make sure that, you know, of the two big crises we're in at the moment, COVID, there's actually a bigger one, which is global warming. And embracing responsible and sustainable living has to be an absolutely core thing of you know, everything we do, and we are in a hurry. You know, I mean, it's 95 degrees Fahrenheit or 35 degrees Celsius outside in London today, and it's 55 degrees in Baghdad. So, you know, global warming is like a real thing now, and rapid decarbonisation down to sustainable living is not an option. It's something we've got to get going with right now. And just so you know, that's Saddleworth Moor on fire in February of 2019, and that was due to unprecedentedly drought-like conditions in February. You know, when usually Saddleworth Moor would be about waist deep in boggy mud at that time of year, and it's on fire because it's so dry. Exploring new economic and ownership models. So I've already mentioned this, but just to sort of say that we're talking about co-owning, cooperative approaches, but we're also just talking about you know, new ways of holding land so that you can you have security of tenure and you know, make projects happen. And the three projects that I've illustrated there. One is Bread and Roses, which is a cooperative in Bradford. That street is an incredibly beautiful buildings on the street, North Parade in Bradford, but the business side of it is completely run down. And the cooperative Bread and Roses put together a really nice co-worker space, and it's a cooperative, and it's just a great project. Rock House, which is I've only got a picture of the floor plan there, but what's interesting about that is it's a 70s office block in Hastings that's been converted not just into spaces for new economy businesses, but it's actually got residential on the upper floors, which anybody who knows about planning and building regs knows how hard that is to pull off. But they pulled it off, and those residential properties are you know, owned by the trust, not by the people who live in them. So as the value increases, that will go to the trust, and the people who live there get security of tenure, but no kind of windfall. And the final one is Slowitz in West Yorkshire, which Paul Salverson knows well, the handmade bakery there, which again is a co-op, and that business was started with bonds sold to is funded through bonds sold to local people who then get free bread for the rest of their natural lives if they were one of the original bread bond holders. And we always thought that was a really interesting economic and ownership model for a community-owned business. Fourth one, and I really need to race through these. Peter's already said that, you know, the pride in your heritage, your local character, cultural identity is really part of what makes British places special. And all the way from reviving the Jack in the Green Festival in Hastings, which is now a real featured local scene. What we're trying to do up in Bolton is we're trying to welcome both residents of Bolton and visitors to Bolton through means of making the station a much more welcoming place. And that means tapping in, making people appreciate their heritage more than they do. And I just wanted to show something that Paul's done. One of the things that Paul Salverson has discovered about Bolton, or knows about Bolton, is the long-standing connection with the American poet Walt Whitman. Those guys there, the old Bolton Whitman Circle, doing their thing back in the 1890s, whenever it was. And we've now got Walt Whitman's poetry praising the railways up at the railway station. So that's the kind of thing that, you know, I just think it's all upside. So that's a great thing to do. And our final civic building block, is genuine democracy and civic action. There's a picture there of Peter McFadden in action in Frome, so I won't talk about that too much, but we have got a few people who are part of the new wave of small-scale people who are taking the route of getting elected to parish and town councils in order to make change in their community, and it's a very interesting route to getting involved in making change that I hope we can discuss later. So, what I just wanted to, so I'll just be as quick as I can. Peter's going to say a couple of words about the two aspects of our mission, but we've got to kind of what I want to try and get across is that we want to be a space where people are doing stuff in their own community, making good things happen in their own communities, can connect with each other. But there's no subscription. It's an informal, non-institutional environment, and it allows people to ask the question, what is it I'm doing, and how do I get better at doing it? You know, how do I share know-how? So we are kind of a group for civic activists or local heroes to kind of share experiences, and I think that's something that's not quite, you know, I mean, there's lots of people, different things going on out there, but our space, I think we have got a space that needs to be filled by somebody. But the second aspect of it is to make sure that the wider world understands what civic activists do, what they're achieving, and what the obstacles are to them doing those things, and increase the sort of general recognition of what everybody's doing in this space. So I'm and of course with a government hat on, you know, somebody needs to say to government, if you were to make these changes to regulations, you make people's lives a lot easier, and a lot more good things would happen. And that's the kind of thing that, you know, we might get into at some point, or we can be part of that process. So so we're launching the website today. I hope you've already had a quick look at it. But the concept we've got is that we want to report what's going on the ground across the country, but with a particular eye for, you know, places that maybe aren't catching the attention of you know, the kind of national media so much, and raise profile that way. And we also want to create a space for people to put down their thinking, their original ideas, and we also, you know, there's such an amazing amount of stuff on the web. We want to try and bring some of, you know, curate some of that content for people who are interested in our stuff, and bring it to attention. So that's reports and thinking. We do intend to have opinions, and we will we will be putting, you know, when we have things to say, we will put our opinions up in that part of the website. But we will have the following principles. We're independent. We're not in anyone's pocket. At the bottom left, we will be we're a neutral space where people with all sorts of political beliefs can debate and meet each other. So we're not coming from any particular political position, and you know, we're only as strong as the knowledge exchange we provide, and people, you know, we need people to value us as a resource so that we can make our contribution. And just to kind of we've attempted to categorize our kindred spirits in this thing. We're just at the start of the process of really compiling these, but we want to relate to people who are, you know, out and out, they've got a campaign and a cause, people who are doing stuff in their local communities. There is an international movement that are in the same space of local futures and this kind of thing, and we're going to develop those links, and we hope we can be a point for that. And we also, you know, if you do this as a business, you're in the consultancy, we would like to feature your expertise. And if you are doing this from an academic or research perspective, you know, we want to link to you there. So those are our kindred spirits categories. And I'm going to stop there. I have gone on longer than I intended to. But what our future activities are, I mean, obviously the original plan was to be very, very face-to-face and going to visit places, taking groups of people to see places, and things happen when, you know, people get together in you know, places that they might not have visited before. But because of the lockdown, we've not been able to do that. So we're online. We are hoping that face-to-face will come back as a thing that we do, and we hope to be doing study visits and visiting people who've got interesting projects. But whilst we're online, we are definitely in the market for using the website as a means of bringing people together, and Zoom events as a means of bringing people together. And so we are super keen to get your input on what you'd like to see us do. Have I now reappeared as a face?
Yeah, you're done.
Yeah, I'm done. So yeah, thanks very much.
So I'm just going to pick up very, very briefly one area of what Richard talked about. If I can screen share now, 3 of the visuals Richard showed. I would like to re-emphasize this what I would call this linking up and this synthesizing approach we're taking. We know there's loads of people campaigning about placemaking. We know there's loads of people campaigning about sustainability and local Agenda 21 and transition towns. We know there's loads of people campaigning on heritage and culture. There's people wanting new economic change and new political change. We think that all of those pieces need to overlap better, and that there are some real interesting common grounds between them that people would only discover if they come into the same space. Today, I was, it's not a surprise because it happens so often, but Nick Waits, who's written, I think it's about 10 books on this subject of community planning and community empowerment, was introduced at the beginning of this get-together to Peter McFadden from Frome, who's put a lot of things into practice. And as far as I could gather, they don't know each other, or probably don't even know each other's work. And that's a shame, because if they were working together or had been working together, it would have enriched both of their professional and personal agendas. I think there's so much of that to do. Just to say to someone, look, you've been campaigning away about this and somebody's just starting the same project in another place. Do compare notes and understand what works and what doesn't. Do the next one. The first bit of the mission is that, and it's to connect people up and to share and to compare and contrast. And the second bit, I'll just say a little bit more about, which is how we can perhaps, can you move, to get a bit more understanding in the wider world, which could be media, politics, business, anywhere, that what in earth is this idea of civic activism, and what are these people on about, and why are they on about it, and how difficult they found it, and how easier it could be with a little tiny bit of tweaking of financial allocations or structures. I put this phrase citizen army into a couple of emails in the last few days, and 2 people have come back and say, yeah, I believe that's a really important point, because there's a great deal of misunderstanding and lack of understanding of this whole civic activist, proud of where I live, want to help, have seen an opportunity to make things better. And we've heard all about initiatives of localism. We've heard all about David Cameron's, I can't remember what it was, but some initiative that lasted at least a week, I think, about giving more power to people to do things locally and to harness the energies of individuals. And I still don't think there's anything like the right structure for it. We've got little bits of it going on, neighbourhood planning. There's things like saving a pub under the asset of community importance, but there's so much more structural stuff could be done to make being a good citizen easier. And I do hope that some of what we discover can be passed on to influence those who make the framework under which we all live. That's all I really wanted to say in addition to what Richard said. So I think it's back to you, Richard, now.
So, So, with apologies to our speakers, I'm not going to take too much time off our other speakers, but Paul, we just wanted to sort of have our other three directors say hello. So, Paul, are you? I think you appear here as Fairphone 2, which is Professor Paul Salverson. Can you just say a word, please, Paul?
Yeah, except I'm appearing actually on Linda Nuttall's phone, who's sat next to me, because this phone seems to be working better than mine. But can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Paul, I think maybe you're kind of breaking up a bit.
Hear me?
Yeah,
hang
we
on.
can hear you.
Yeah. How's that? Can you hear me now? How's that? Can you hear me now?
Yes, that's better.
Right. Okay. Let's try this. Well, okay. Well, I'll keep this fairly short. I can hear myself echoing. I'm like in an echo chamber. This was going to come from Bolton, which was going to come from Bolton, which apparently is basking in quite a Baghdad. I'm actually in rural Wales, which is about 19 degrees pissing down, and you count this from a zinc hotel, which is an interesting example of a community pub. And I'm just going to turn the and oh, that's better. So I'm very sorry about this. I'm stuck on a hillside. Just bear with me one moment. That's better. The Zinc Hotel is an amazing place, which is a cooperatively run pub in a small community in South Pembrokeshire, or no, North Pembrokeshire. And an example of what we're trying to achieve with Civic Revival. I'm very pleased that we're seeing two axes of evil, or whatever it might be, Bolton and Hastings. Is this coming through okay? Can you hear me now? Yeah. I'm hoping you are. I'll keep going. And so I think the whole point of Civic Revival, to me, it's an opportunity to learn about lots of good things that are happening around the country. At Bolton, I've been very involved with Bolton Station's revival. It was a big, rambling, I wouldn't say quite exactly derelict station, but there was loads and loads of rooms that had long since ceased to have any useful function. So we're bringing those back into use now in partnership with the railway industry and the University of Bolton. And great things are going to start happening there. But there's lots of other examples of community buildings around the country, in Frome, Hebden Bridge, but also in sort of, pretty deprived working class communities where people are getting together and doing some quite remarkable things. So providing a network which is informal, willing to sort of challenge, receive wisdom, I think that's so very important. So I think there's great things going to happen. I'll look forward to working with colleagues involved in community projects in other parts of the country, across the UK. I think probably initially the focus will be mainly in England, as I understand it, but here in Wales there's lots of good things happening with community projects. Earlier on in the week, on our mini holiday, we stopped off at Lanrooted Wells, which is the smallest town in the UK, but they've done some quite fantastic things like the bog snorkeling championships and mad things like that, which bring people in and spend money in the community. So I'm not quite sure what the equivalent of bog snorkeling in Bolton would be. Maybe some sort of there's already black pudding throwing championships and being involved in tribe. I don't know. We shouldn't lose the sense of fun. I was talking to a friend of mine who's been involved in the community rail movement for a very long time, and said, well, there's a risk of becoming incorporated and losing that sense of fun and slightly anarchic approach to doing things, we can end up getting very easily getting incorporated into the system and losing our distinctiveness. So greetings from the from a mountain in Wales. Oh, I'm back again.
Thank you very much, Paul. That was a suitably anarchic contribution. So if you can mute yourself, I'm just going to ask John Dale to mute yourself now, Paul, if you can, and Peter. John, John Dale, are you there? Can you say a couple of words?
I am here, about as near here as I ever am, Richard. I'll be honest with you.
So, yeah, the floor's yours.
Some words, eh? All right. Well, good evening, everyone. I'm already onto the non-alcoholic beer. Got to pace myself at my age. Yeah, I think the reason I'm one of the trustees who was asked to get involved in this was essentially because I'm a traffic engineer, so they had somebody to blame for everything, and I'm happy to perform that function. But in addition to that, I think it's interesting reflecting on how communities, how activism works. At the moment, you're probably familiar, many of you will be, with different levels, probably normally of dissatisfaction and anger amongst local communities about things that are happening, arising from the current crisis. But they're familiar tales from other times, which is, it seems that a lot of community activism only tends to happen, or a lot of it really only happens or gets oxygen, so to speak, when it's in opposition to something. And often that opposition, it strikes me, is provoked, if that's not too hard a word, by the lack of general involvement. And I think something that Peter Stoner mentioned earlier, is something I'm quite conscious of. We're not really talking about campaigning here. We're talking about activism, just people doing things. And when in my communities, and many like them, when people start getting active, it's normally to push against something. And I think what that tends to hide is the fact there is a lot of what Richard and Peter have already referred to as community heroism going on, so to speak. And actually what we could do is build upon that and embed that more in local people's feelings of ownership, pride, the ability to do something within their own communities. I think there's a strong identification with that community. Sometimes it's a very hard word to describe and is probably overused, but most people know what that means, whether it's their street, their bit, this side of that road, or around this little centre, or whatever it might be. And it does strike me, and I don't know if I'm overreacting to some things that are happening right now, or to what has been happening in the last few years and some of the polarization in some of our political debates, but that sense of dissatisfaction with perhaps a sense of powerlessness. So I'm going to take some kind of control back. I'm sorry to have to bring that phrase in, but in a way that is quite sort of in your face, rather than more natural and driven by positive motives. If I can, I'm just going to, for no particular reasons other than I think it's quite an interesting photograph, but perhaps it represents something. It's a photograph I took outside my house yesterday. And it's not quite outside my house. If you can see my cursor, there's a massive hornbeam at the far end there. That's obscuring the window I'm nearly sitting at the moment. And there's this street, and I didn't know this was happening. It's quite remarkable. This amazing sort of street, a Edwardian street from about 1914 when it was first laid out. You can see the church on the left-hand side. Is an amazing community facility. Just to the right, behind some guardrails, sadly, is a church hall where a lot of people congregate. It's a street that people feel part of. It's easy to meet your neighbours, even easier, frankly, when there are fewer cars moving on it, as there has been in the last few months, and albeit for a day, no cars even parked there. It's a wonderful street, but the moment a lot of what the people on these communities are coalescing about is, we don't want what the council is proposing. And I don't need to get into what that might be particularly, except that it strikes me as sad that that's when a lot of community activism is most seen, is in reaction to something. And what it seems to me, that this initiative, Civic Revival, is aimed at doing, is to trying to empower people who are positive about their, and I'm not saying anything about the reasons why my people might object to stuff. That's entirely allowable, of course. But actually it's trying to harness and to coalesce actions which are related to a positive sense, and perhaps to give people a home. The idea of, I thought of this, but I didn't know that anybody else did. I didn't know there was somebody in my community. Richard or Peter was just saying how people in this space don't know each other. That's at the national level in the kind of work that we're talking about. But what about at the local level? You know, there might be just someone up the road who wants to do something similar, feels like you do about things, have always had that concern. And it strikes me that if we start, you don't know where we're going to finish with this. You know, social media is a kind of an overused and possibly a misunderstood term, but there is an extent to which that's kind of what Civic Revival, as I see it, is trying to contribute to. You know, what we have your conventional social media, which are local WhatsApp groups or Facebook groups, which tend to be, sadly, often kind of just a modern version of curtain twitching, objecting to things that they see happening. How do we do something similar that it really tries to enable people who want to change and to find like minds and to do stuff for their communities? I think it's really exciting, and that's why when I was asked, other than for the blame it will fall on me because of my kind of role, I'm very happy to help, and I'm entirely behind it.
Thank you very much, John. If you could go back on mute. So we just wanted to introduce Erica Smith, who's our 5th trustee or founder director. But Erica, I think we've stolen everybody's time. But can you just say hello so everyone can
I'm going to say something really quickly, because I think the thing that's really can you hear me? The thing that I think is really interesting about this is building community and community buildings and how they connect. And I really go with that idea about it can be incredibly negative if you're a community campaigner and you're constantly opposing things, and it can really wear you down. And I think that trying to get that bigger vision and understanding and trust and discussion within a broader community, often people seem to want to keep things as they are, including having a street which has got cars in it rather than being pedestrianised, and trying to get that bigger vision and understanding about how positive change can happen is really important. And there's been some really great local, I'm from Hastings too, changes which have happened. A physical one is the Transition Towns Garden, which is on the station platform in St Leonard's, and it's brilliant. And another thing which I'm really proud of is building a virtual community of Hastings creatives. And that it's just an email list, and it's also now a Facebook page. But people talk to each other, and people lend each other things, and new people come to live in the area. They're instantly welcomed by about 40 people, and I think it's quite incredible. And I'm fascinated by that connection between building community and community building.
Thank you so much, Erica. And we're claiming you for the northwest of England as well as for Hastings, by the way.
Warrington, yeah, as well.
Yeah. Right, now, look, we've completely knackered the timeline that we agreed with our special guest speakers. I'm going to introduce them both. And then I'm hoping that Tom and Peter in Mission Control will tell us that we're not going to actually lose the signal at 6 o'clock. But we do need to leave time to open our drinks and get Nick to help everybody have a contribution. But before we do, Sarah Longlands and Peter McFadden have kindly agreed to say something, so I'm going to give them their full slot of 2-3 minutes. Sarah Longlands is the Director of IPPR North in Manchester, and is Sarah, are you there? Are you able to
yeah, I'm here. I've got a small friend as well. The joys of lockdown. Yeah, the joys of having to work at home is that I've got a very persistent 1-year-old who is not taking being downstairs for an answer. So
she's so welcome. Just hang in
the
picture.
I thought it was appropriate since she is like the future of civic revival in this country. So, but listen, I wanted to say thanks for the invitation to come along this afternoon and join you, and to really congratulate you on what looks like a fantastic initiative and a great website. And I'm really really, you know, honoured to be having been invited to say a few words. For those of you who don't know IPPR North, so IPPR North is the dedicated think tank for the north of England, and IPPR is one of the very few think tanks, national think tanks, that has a presence outside of Westminster. And we were set up 16 years ago, really to provide voice to some of the real concerns in the north of England, and I guess as well as a positive movement. To really put forward the idea that the north of England is not just a case of special pleading, but it is an area with real potential and real opportunity and real cultural and economic diversity. And what we wanted to do was build a movement and a momentum to give the north and all regions of England indeed the chance to really fulfil their potential. So today the Civic Revival is something very close to my heart. I'm based in Bolton. And, you know, when I think of Civic Revival, one of the first things that comes into my mind, being a sort of an adopted Boltonian, is the fact that, you know, back more than 100 years ago in 1896, we had the mass trespass on Winter Hill, which was really a forerunner of the mass trespass in Kinderscout. And in Bolton, 10,000 people came out to try and claim their right to the right to roam. And it's a really powerful example of kind of what that kind of Boltonian spirit of wanting to see change happen and wanting to see positive change happen. And I think that's a really interesting point that's been raised about that need to really build that sense of use civic activism for hope as well as when we're against things. So that's the first thing I wanted to say. The second thing was about place, and place is something that runs through all of IPPR's North's work. When we talk about the North a lot, but I guess the message that we're trying to get through to politicians in Westminster and mayors and across the country as they start to emerge is that place is important, that you can't, as we've seen during the COVID crisis, you can't try to run a country all from Westminster. You can't have a one-size-fits-all approach, that the way in which things happen and the way in which things affect people varies by place, and you've got to take that into consideration. You've got to listen to people as well and provide channels for people to get their voice through. And place to me is, someone once said, it's a way of understanding. It's a lens through which we could understand and shape and engage with public policy. And I think the work that you're doing here is a real opportunity to do that. And then the third thing I wanted to say was just really, I think what you're doing is really hopeful, and I think we need that at this time when it's such a crazy time, especially in Greater Manchester after the announcement last night. There's a real sense of a loss of hope. And I think we often hear about, politicians are always talking about, parts of the country being broken, the policy's broken, the economy's broken, the transport system's broken. But actually, what we've learned during COVID and the lockdown is that people aren't broken, communities are not broken. People have gone out of their way to help each other and to support each other during what has been a hugely traumatic and still is traumatic time for communities. So that's something that we can take great hope from, and that we can use to build on. And I think the work that you're doing now will be really important in helping to provide a channel for how those people who've got engaged and got involved because of COVID can continue to do so in the future, to tackle some of the many challenges and many of the opportunities as well in the future. So that's all I really wanted to say. I wish you all the luck, and if IPPR North, we're normally based in Manchester, if we can help at all, really happy to do so, and really looking forward to seeing how it goes over the next few months. And next time I'm getting on the train at Bolton, I'll put my head around the door.
Thank you, sir. Can we have one last look at your daughter? What's her name?
Gracie.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Right, that was brilliant. Thank you. Right. Peter McFadden, are you there? Yeah. So I'm hoping Peter Stonham will tell us that we're not going to get cut off at 6, and he needs to cut in and tell us if we are. But away you go, Peter. Thanks for coming.
No, thank you. And I'll cut some time by saying I absolutely share Sarah's comments at the beginning. Thanks for inviting me. And I just think this is a brave and timely thing to be doing at this moment, and brilliant to be doing, to try and bring some positivity into this arena in the way which you are. So that's really brilliant to see. I also need to say, we meant the Zoom might not be going to explode, but I do have to leave just before 6. So, but I'm only going to take a minute to say what I need to say. and I won't be around for very much longer, I'm afraid. But I really look forward to engaging later and finding ways to work together. I'm here because I served, if that's the right term, as a town councillor with spells as mayor and leader in Frome for 10 years, finishing last May. And that just gave me a really interesting insight into the disaster that is local democracy, in my view. In fact, I try and find ways of not using the word democracy, because I've become more and more clear that we don't live in one, and there hasn't been one since the Greeks, and probably with a few, fine exceptions like some indigenous cultures. But I've just become more and more horrified, really, about the extent to which this lowest layer, or this, the community layer of so-called democracy, is I don't know, is just so dysfunctional, not because of the people involved, but because of the systems and the way that it's created. And some of that is about party politics, in my view, because the same methodology and the same basis of confrontation has come down from Westminster, and where that pervades local levels, it's a complete disaster. And I just think that now more than ever, you've probably always been able to say that, but it feels like now more than ever, there is a place for local councils and local representation to be rebuilt into something which actually functions. And so as I say, I've been involved in that and involved in more and more discussions, really, over the last 5 years, really. I wrote Flatback Democracy, which sits over my shoulder, which was really to try and share the story of what we'd done in Frome, not, as somebody said earlier, as a model to be taken slavishly, but as something to offer, saying, here's some ideas, use what you can and reject what you can't, which is very much how I see it. And then more recently, I've got involved with a really interesting bunch of people who are looking to roll out the support for people to stand in local elections in the way that we're saying it really works, which is by coming together as a group with a really strong ethos that binds people together, and then running participatory democracy, running ways that genuinely bring people into a position of power. Because my understanding is that what the Greeks meant by democracy was actually giving people power. It wasn't just about giving engagement and participation and a sort of token, say at a table. It was about really giving people power. So what I'm interested in is really pushing for that at this community level, because I think the combination of good community councils and good active civic society can really push things. That's a sort of secret weapon, and the only way, in my book, that we will cope with what comes next, which is whatever's next with COVID-19, and then Brexit, and then climate change, as Richard so rightly said at the beginning, because that's the big one, and unless we've got communities that really work, we're going to be even more seriously stuffed than we probably are anyway. That's what I wanted to say, and and to really wish you well. Sorry about the phone. With the next bits, and I really look forward to engaging.
Thank you very much indeed, Peter, and we'll get that book advertised on the website straight away. I'll be in touch about that. Right. So with a million apologies to Nick Waits, because we've got into his time, we're just going to ask Nick to kind of help to conduct the discussion. I've put something in the chat. We don't have the Q&A box, so we're using the chat to pose questions and say things. And I've proposed that we run this till 6:15 with an opportunity for people who have to leave at 6 to do so. And Peter's going to uncork the champagne or something.
Can I open my sherry now?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've got my my bottle of Stockport brewed Co-op bitter.
I think I'll get a decent sound effect out of this. Let's try.
So
no, it's not very good.
So Nick, are you there? Are you able to take the controls?
Won't get much.
Nick, you need to unmute.
Hi, we'll do it again.
Hi, we'll do it again. This is my this is your virtual drink and my real drink. So, cheers.
Congratulations.
And I have spent most of the morning reading material on the website, and there's some great material there. So I hope you're all going to really enjoy looking at it after this session. And here's the Civic Revival.
Yeah.
Now, moderating is rather a grand term. All I'm intending to do is to indicate when you can speak. So please, could you either raise your hand. Jane here will be taking a special look out to notice whether you're raising your hand. And also, you can raise your hand in the panel on the right-hand side of the screen if you want to say something, and then I will simply indicate who should go first. So can I have a volunteer to start?
Well, I'd suggest you play in David Beeman to say something.
David. Right. David, please go ahead.
I've got to, you can't do it.
I'm afraid I don't have control of the muting, so Tom or Peter is going to have to do that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I apologise. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay,
now.
good. We're coming to a very critical time, I think, now, because we've got a devolution and recovery white paper coming out in September, and I think, you know, and now we're getting sort of, and creating these mega authorities which are going to totally undermine what we've achieved so far up here. And I wonder if, you know, we need to get our act together. I mean, even at the best of times, we're talking about authorities of 300,000, 400,000, 500,000, in Sir's case, 1.2 million. It's just totally illogical in my book, and we've got to resist it. I know we've done it fighting, you know, we're always opposing things, but this is something I think is quite critical and will make life very difficult for people like myself, who's a councillor in Farnham, dear old Farnham. Okay.
Thank you, David. Who'd like to go next? We use that, don't we, really? Right, so let me recommend someone. Nicholas Falk, an old comrade.
Just was posting. I've just sent you a.
Oh, there it is.
I'm unmuted. Okay. Well, once again, Peter and Richard, you are to be congratulated. I'm sure you hit a spot that needs to be massaged, because it's a key area. We're thinking about it like an erogenous zone, a sort of place that would give us pleasure if we can only focus on sort of opportunities and not just problems. So that is great. The question I raise is whether you are primarily concerned with neighborhoods, and I'm thinking there of streets, or it could be a town center, or whether you are interested in the wider way in which cities or networks of towns can grow, particularly in terms of linking transport and development together. And my own view, as I'm sure you know, is that we need to learn from other parts of Europe, particularly Northern Europe, where they have created much more equal places through investing in transport and development in the right places. And I mentioned two mayors I've talked to, the mayor of Montpellier and the mayor of Eindhoven, who in both cases dropped political affiliations and just said, I am Montpellier, I am Eindhoven. And it may be that one of the things we have to do is not just, dare I say, create our own comfortable friendships at a neighborhood level. And I'm speaking from Stroud at the moment, but was in King's Cross this morning, both of which I think would qualify. But also find ways of crossing boundaries at this wider level. And so I raise this question of how are we going to do that? What is the technology? Because undoubtedly webinars are fantastic. We could have people speaking from Montpellier or Eindhoven who would share very similar values. But there is a limit to how many people we can carry on a communication with. So I wonder if you've got ideas which might be imaginative. I, for example, personally think that the way forward will be the short video and the PowerPoint, so that we've orchestrated what we say, and we really do use our 2-3 minutes or 5 minutes to maximum effect. But there may be other ways, and I do think that also means finding people who are interested in and can complement whatever interests or expertise we bring to bear. So I'm sorry if that was a bit complicated, but in summary, I think you're actually hitting the spot.
No, very useful, Nick. And I hope that Peter and Richard may be able to come back on that at the end.
Okay.
Right, who have we got next?
Can I ask a question?
Please do.
Well, it was one I sent through to Mr. Stonham earlier, and he's willfully ignored it. So I'm going to pose it to him now. Local media tend to portray local councils in a very negative way. Council clowns cock it up again is a typical sort of, it's the emotion that's conveyed by the headlines. There's very little talking up of the local authority, or indeed local places, that goes on in the media. John Dales may have met Edward Chorlton, who was he was Deputy County of Surveyor. He was Deputy Chief Executive of Devon County Council. He made some very significant achievements in at least street design guidance, and he left the council, having spent most of his career there, to become chairman of Exeter City Football Club. And he said that had the local people and the local media cheered on the council in the same way that they cheered on the football team, the whole place would have been transformed. So the question is, for Mr. Stonham, as a media expert, how can we encourage local media to talk up the place and to really stop citizens acting as a sort of blame culture, being negative about a place, but being positive and seeing opportunity? Mr. Stonham.
Peter, do you want to come in?
I need to be invited by Nick, because he's...
oh, sorry.
I would say two embedded points that you've raised. One is media as a big sort of catch-all expression, which could range from Sky Television and the Guardian down to the local level. That's one point, and I'd like to run with that one. And the other point is about you know, the local government structure and the local government performance. And I won't go on at that length about that, but I'm with David Beeman on that. Here's a principle, I don't know whether it's mine or so. I think we should have the lowest viable unit of democracy for the intended activity, right? So if it's about allotments and if it's about the street, it should be at a very low level. If it's about a high-speed railway that runs through your area from London to Manchester, then it obviously won't be done at parish level. Government hates this untidiness. Oh, well, who's got that responsibility? Well, that's different from that. That's perfectly doable. It's just some bureaucratic model that people want to impose for a whole set of reasons that we've never been asked about. I don't think I've ever had an opportunity in any circumstance whatsoever to have a general discussion about the right way I'll be governed locally. Right? It all comes down from government with proposals before they've even sounded me out on them. We've got them going on and now about abolishing a layer of local authorities and having unitary counties and things like that. And it's all half done already, and before I've even found out about it. The second point is that this is local media, right? It's not part of a big chain of publishing companies. And Robert, talk to the right media and you'll get the right response. If you say your local newspaper isn't doing a good job on covering what's going on in Tunbridge Wells, find the local free community-based paper or website and talk to them instead. You won't get much out of the big local media. They're all collapsing. and they're driven by a whole different set of agendas. And I think using the word media without defining what you mean is dangerous.
Thank you, Peter. Anybody else? Christopher Dodwell. Hi, Chris.
Unmute. Have to be unmuted.
Sorry.
You can't do it.
Could somebody unmute Christopher, please?
Hold on. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, no, just say thank you very much for the invite. It's been, I'm very impressed with the caliber of speakers and the, yeah, I can't, you know, I hope to be involved as much as I can in the future. And I'll be in contact. I have to go now, but thank you very much. I'll be in contact. Thank you.
Very nice. Nice
Thank
to
you,
meet
Christopher. Perhaps you could write an article about the construction of Rock House.
Yes, well, it gets even bigger now because they're expanding, and what they're doing is actually very, very interesting because it's trying to redefine town centres with, you know, mixed use with controlled rent housing and mixed with commercial activities, and it's trying much push for the sort of, you know, mixed use or so there's no separation between you know, commercial activities and residential activities. It's all the same. And part of the problem is at the moment the planning separates them quite vigorously between there's one or the other, and but the future is very much not that, and it's almost a piece of legislation about fire regulations and planning needs to be changed. Anyway, I have to go. I'll speak shortly. All right, thank you.
Christopher. Great project. Anybody else? Yes, please, Guy.
Me on mute. Right, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Well, I'm fairly new to this initiative. I was invited to join it by Peter Stonham. So, Peter, thanks very much for that, and pleased to meet other members of the group, including obviously Richard Walker as well, who started it. I think my view on this is I was coming at it from a fairly specific sector point of view, and I suppose I live in Hertford, in about 30 miles north of London, so you could say the capital town of Hertfordshire. But Hertford itself, as a sense of place, doesn't really have something that it can identify with, I would say. My interest is around aviation heritage, for which the county has a great reputation. The fact that it has that reputation, or had that reputation in olden days, is probably of no slightest bit of interest to young people these days. And Hertford itself wouldn't have had any links with that, although it does have some tenuous links, but that's going back to about 1900 or something. But we're going through a regeneration in Hertford Town Centre, and the local council has gone through several stages of reviewing planning applications, and finally has decided to go ahead with something. But I thought what would be important would be to use this opportunity of a rebuild of the town centre right at the heart of Hertford to have a sense of place built in somehow. And I think about Bolton example. I think of Bolton, I've been to Bolton a few times, and the one thing that struck me about Bolton was the fact that it's got a huge statue of Tony Hancock bang in the middle, and Tony was born in Bolton, as I understand it. Mm-hmm. Is that correct? The Bolton people? I don't know, right?
No idea.
Okay.
I think there's more than one Bolton.
Yeah. Yeah, all right. I'm talking about Bolton in Lancashire. And to me, a sense of place is often developed by the history and the characters that live there. And if you, in a way, as a local council, build on that by, I don't know, publicising events that relate to those characters and the history of the town, that's the way you get a sense of place that people can identify with other people.
The guy we've got a statue of in Bolton, Guy, is Fred Dibner.
Right.
Who's exactly what you're talking about.
Right, there you go, Fred Dibner. Links with railways, etc. But So I think that's a personal view that I think is something that I'm going to be taking up with the local council here. I'm not a council member. I'm a local member of the public. I lived in Hertford for about 30 years now, so I know it quite well and perhaps what it needs. So I'm really pleased to be part of this group because I'm drawing on the experience of others here who've made comments so far, which I found invaluable. So I just say thanks for inviting me, Peter, and I hope to be able to contribute some more snippets later on as the project team develops.
Excellent, thank you very
much.
Now.
My wife's a nurse and she's just got back from work, so I think we need to relax a bit. But thanks very much for joining you, and Peter for inviting me. And
thank you, Guy. Anybody else? Yes, John.
Thanks very much, David. I just want to pick up the point actually that Rob Huxford made earlier, and they're talking about, really it's more about the general issue of the incredibly low esteem in which the council, wherever you are, this is my experience working across the country, the council is held as an appallingly low esteem in the general mind, such that it always strikes me like the thing is you don't get treats from the council, do you? They're just there all day, every day, doing the ordinary tasks. And it's so easy to blame them. So the council says virtually anything, and I'm not talking about, Peter, the media or how that works out. I'm just talking about just basically general people, which is, the council. They're held in such low esteem indeed that local MPs of the same party regularly have a go at the council because they know that plays well, even if they're of the same party. And I haven't got any answers at all. I'm just intensely aware of that. And I suppose one of the things I'm thinking of is what could an organisation like Civic Revival do to help, listen to what David was saying earlier and others decided, well, how does that become a mutually supportive thing? The council is, instead of being this, it's a bit of an idiot really, and most of the time actively malign. It's almost how it's out there. How do we get a stronger partnership at the local level? And I take everything that Peter said about the level of sort of, as it were, decision making devolving to the scale of the project. How do we get the people who live in any given community, well, however we define that, to feel that there is some kind of active partnership, there is a positive thing that we can happen here? And I do think, maybe it's because I've mentioned a few times, but others have too, this idea, how do we build, how do we make and harness the energy that's there and the feelings that's there in the local community? How do we make that more positive? How do we enable that? I don't have any answers, but it does fit with a mission, I think. But it's that specific idea of trying to work out how we raise the esteem within which funding, the council that's a funding partner has got all the right policies normally that would be benign for this, even to the extent of wanting to communicate and engage effectively and empower, as already been said, communities. How does that actually, what can we do to achieve that? I think that relationship between communities and whichever the council is something worth trying to think about how that might develop. Sorry, Martin, I can see you waving, sir.
That's excellent. Sorry, did you say Martin? Yeah. Martin, did you want to go?
I would say I will need to leave shortly, sorry, apologies. Engaged in local government, it feels like it's been quite an overwhelming last few months. But having worked with Richard, I'd kind of put a note in the side. There's a danger with something like this, that it will aim high but bite off more than it can chew. And I do think Richard and Peter will strike the right balance of, you've got to aim high, but actually also be practical and action focused. And I hadn't realised until I've just joined the community of just how what an august group of people are supporting, encouraging, assisting, helping. And that also kind of reinforces the sense that there's a real thing here that can make a difference. And that is properly exciting, just as it comes to the end of term. So this is a really uplifting end to the week. Thank you.
Wow, that was a very helpful end. Oh, we've got one more, and then I think we should let Peter and Richard respond. Angela Moorcroft, although I'm sure it's not Angela.
Well, it's Anthony Brunt, actually, from I'm from the little village of Dunster. Now, we used to be in West Somerset District Council, but about 18 months ago, the District Council felt they were too small, and they amalgamated with Taunton Deane to become Taunton West Somerset Council. And now there is an ongoing discussion as to whether all the district councils in Somerset should all become unified as to one large council. So it is rather going against the grain as to what you've been talking about today. And certainly we feel far more remote than we did a couple of years ago.
Interesting point. In fact, if you read Peter's very excellent article on the website, which kind of introduces planning and the reorganisation of local government, which has been, you know, so much a cause of huge problems throughout the history of Civic Revival. I think we probably should draw this to a close now. Peter, do you want to respond? Wind up?
Yeah, a couple of things were put on the table. Can I just deal with this business about councils? It's kind of interesting, and thanks for reading my piece, Nick. I did write up the history of municipalism and municipal governments in this country. And although conditions in 1830, whatever it was, were rather different, the motivations were rather better than the ones we have now. I mean, it was about sorting things out at the local level. I mean, sanitation was a driving force. And then after that, we had, you know, gas, water, omnibuses, tramways. And, you know, local councils were allowed to do things locally at town level. Hastings tramways, if you remember, because you're in Hastings too, was a tramway for a couple of decades in the early part of the century. I've got to put the argument again. I think there's something flawed inside what the government thinks and what many local authorities think their job is. I mean, they use this phrase governance, right, as though we all need to be organised by some wonderful, clever person that we don't quite know who it is, who's going to sort things out. And it's all part of this corporatised managerialism, which is imbuing everything from retail to banking. I mean, I'm in favour of small units, right? And at the council level, I'm really against these big, you know, efficient, wide-ranging authorities, because it loses the connection with the populace that they're working for. David's raised it, Anthony's raised it. I don't, you know, taking Martin Capstick's point, I don't think we're going to take that one on as Civic Revival, but I think our position on it, if asked, is that we need a good, low level, by which I mean close to people, a grassroots level of local democracy. And, you know, Peter McFadden's done it in Frome. I know it's being done in other areas with parishes taking on more responsibilities. And I'm in favour of what analogy. When I was at university, everybody liked branded big beer names, that Watney's Red Barrel meets, you know, all that stuff. And then we had the craft brewery revolution. Well, I drink craft beer whenever I can, and I'd like to be in a craft council area.
I can see people grinning there.
Okay.
Can I just say a last word? Look, I mean, the main thing, I think we're kind of down to family and friends now, and people who want to stick around after we officially close this, just say hello if I've not seen you for a while. I mean, I hope you've enjoyed our show. I think one thing that we've definitely picked up is that people appreciate something that's positive. I took on Martin Capstick, who used with my boss at the Department for Transport. He used to be the director of the North of England. I always take his what he says very seriously, which is, you know, bite off the amount that we're going to be able to chew and digest, and we will do that. But I think the thing that's come to that I thought before this, but has been reinforced by what I've heard, is that, you know, people making stuff happen in their area, in their community, and the kind of professional and you know, the kind of think tank, public service type level. There's a lot of work to be done to link those people and to really kind of get to the bottom of what both sides need to help each other do better. And I think we can. That's what the Department of Transport wanted to invest in economy to this. And I think there is, you know, there's loads and loads of room to do good stuff in this sphere. And you know, just so that civic activists can feel like, you know, not frustrated, but they're but like, you know, suffused with contentment and delight that the things that they wanted to do in their areas are easier to do and doable, you know. So we can contribute in any way by bringing those kind of people together and by providing the kind of information and exchange that allows them to get stuff done. That's what we aim to do. And we've created a thing now. We're not saying it's not an institution, it's not a magazine, it's a thing that is what people who want to get involved with it want to make of it. I hope we've given a flavour of our approach is going to be informal, anarchic possibly, but definitely fun and definitely rewarding, I hope. So that's my last word, and thank you all so much for coming and for staying on for an extra few minutes. Cheers then.
Done. Well done. Yeah, can we do the clapping?
Yeah, so we can do champion and all this thing.
Thanks, Nick.
By the way, can I just say one very quick thing? There's a network in the States I've just been introduced to called Strong Towns.
Yep.
Yes.
Which, and it does seem to me that this notion of strength is rather powerful. I like monosyllabic words rather than resilient or sustainable. So it may be that Strong Towns offers some clues as to the way of connecting up places who share some similar values but are geographically distinct from each other.
Nick, I've got the book, and we'll be in touch with Chuck Marone very soon. Now, I noticed.
Sorry, can I also say it's about time Britain did some initiatives and didn't always have to copy America. And we should remember we're actually part of Europe and not a 52nd state. Or
Absolutely.
Ah.
Now, Cliff Edwards has arrived in time for the drinks. In fact, he's arrived so late you might even miss the drinks.
Hi then.
I'm just looking at who's here. He's in the car.
Yeah, I was protecting my son. He just got back from Poland. Sorry about that. You know, so, and I just, before anything else, I just want to back up what Peter said. You know, that he defined democracy when he says grassroots democracy. That is democracy. You know? So thanks for the intro, and I'd love to have a drink with you guys as soon as you can. Okay.
So, I mean, we're in the kind of, I don't know if Kath Thomason or Paul Limmer or Julie Levy, I don't know if you want to say anything or just kind of so we can see your face, really. The show is over, but it'd be nice to just say hi. Can you unmute everybody at Mission Control?
Yeah. Giles, can you unmute yourself? No, it doesn't matter. People can unmute now. It's such a small group that it doesn't matter. Giles, are you there still? Giles? No. Is he gone? No. Anyway, I wanted to say, Giles, we've been ready to have a drink. Is it?
There he is. Yeah.
Right. I'm just saying, we were going to have a drink, and all we can do is this today. Thanks. Anyway.
Got my cup of coffee. There we go. Sorry, I was on mute and not on video because I always have a guest who gets in the way here. Here he is.
Oh, that's nice. Now, I'm just saying to the residue of 10 people left, I can't meet as many of the people I'd like to meet as I would like to. I am finding Zoom relatively intimate. I was never a big user of Skype or anything, but I have got used to these get-togethers being quite folksy now. You know, kids and pets, and you know, it's just quite a relaxing thing to do, to meet like this. I think it's a question of how many people and what the reason they've got together is. So this has been just nice enough to, you know, 30 people was a good chat for me.
I mean, compared to what I had in mind when, you know, when we were thinking about this, one of the things that would have been nice would be to take people like yourself, Kath, people like Julie, people like Steph Dermott, I think has gone off the call, and go and have a look around Hastings, you know, and then vice versa. And I'm personally a fan of face-to-face, and you know, it's great that you can do this because you can do it at short notice, it doesn't cost money, but you lose a lot when you don't get introduce people to each other and do things in places. But but we do what we can in the circumstances we're in, you know.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the things, I mean, obviously my work's with, like, I do a lot of community development with people, and I think it's really challenging to try and continue that work over Zoom. It's not quite the same as coming together, but we do what we can in the current circumstances. So hopefully we will be able to all meet up again very shortly.
In the flesh, hopefully. Look, Julie, are you going to say something?
Yes, I would like to mention the Jenkinson bid that's going to, a research bid that's going to be happening at the recently refurbished station buildings on platform 5 at Bolton Station. It's a very interesting research project where we're going to bring together community stakeholders from various parts of Bolton with students from the university who are studying social work degrees and other degrees that involve community engagement. And we're going to see through the course of the academic year how that impacts on the participants. And that'll be from both sides, from the student body and from the community as well. So I think that's going to be a good piece of research that we can start to model some of the things that you're actually talking about.
Excellent. It would be great to try.
I'm going to write it down, Julie. Say it again, the name.
The Jenkinson research proposal. It was made to the funding body at the university about 4 or 5 months ago and was accepted.
Julia, can we track that in real time? If you could put something up every month or something, it'd be really good to just watch a project working through.
Yeah, okay. We can do that. Steph and I will do that, won't we, Steph?
Are you there, Steph? I want to see Steph if she's.
Hang on.
You go on screen, Steph. Is that something you do?
She's not here anymore.
No, she's gone. Okay. Is Paul Limmer there? He's lurking.
No, he's gone as well, I think.
Giles, it'd be nice to see your face.
Say something, Giles.
Oh, it's been fascinating, Peter. Unfortunately, I had to take a call just towards the end. I missed the end of the discussion, but I definitely think there's a place for this. It was interesting. The call I had was about the, you know, I'm working in Southampton these days, and our UK City of Culture bid, and the conversation was about diversity and how we do better with our diversity. And I noticed that was an issue that was raised in the chat on this call, and that is a challenge. But what I was saying with respect to Southampton is I think we should make a virtue of our inadequacy rather than trying to sort of hide it with a fig leaf, you know. So I think what you've expressed on this call is a great spirit of openness, and I think we should try as part of the proposition to say we really are open to everybody, and we know we kind of look a bit old and a bit white, but you know, we want this to be a very collegiate and open.
Well, quick point on that. I'm not doing it anymore, which is global travel. But I've been to a few developing countries over the years. And I think the point is what works for different cultures is very different from our system. And rather trying to shoehorn everybody into our model, why don't we create some additional types of conversation that other people are more comfortable with? You know, the village meeting kind of approach is much better than public consultation, big stuff, councils sending loads of forms around. And I mean, we're in danger of killing the goose with all this, what I would call digital democracy. And I mean, if you're going to reach out to certain communities, you have to do it in different ways. And I mean, translating a leaflet into 5 languages is not the solution. I mean, oh yeah, well, we're very diverse and inclusive here. We've had our very complicated forms translated into 35 languages. Well, it's not for the lack of reading them that people haven't responded.
So one of the guys who was on the call earlier was Manu Mistry. So one of the things we do in Bolton, with the station community partnership, you know, there's a big community divide in Bolton, you know, and there's a big Asian population, and the need, you know, any civic activity in the town needs to bring in more than one Asian community. There's, you know, there's the Hindu community and the Muslim community, and one of the things we were going to do was have a steam train, you know, in which we'd sell tickets in through different community groups and then take them on a day out on a steam train. Obviously, Salvo, as a steam enthusiast, was very excited about that. And of course, we've not done it, partly because of the lockdown and partly because, so I'm avoiding Manu Mistry as well as trying to play him in. But
can I mention something?
Yeah.
Could I speak? Manu, over this last 2 or 3 months, has launched a radio station on his own from his house, and he has engaged with over 300,000 people on a daily basis. He's talking to them, he's broadcasting some of the programs in Hindi, some of them in English, and people from all over the world are watching. And listening, sorry, not watching. So
well,
that's,
you know,
that's a model of how one person with an idea can embrace huge amounts of ethnic diversity and different countries as well.
So I've got to organise his steam train, Julie, so I can stop avoiding him. Every time he appears in a room, I have to go into a different room.
No, I think he's too busy at the moment, Richard, to bother.
Yeah, no, I'm all right with that. But he was not too busy to come, you know, and that's nice.
No, he's very supportive. Yeah.
Who's still here who's not spoken?
Liz is here. Liz, can you unmute Liz?
Hello.
Hi, Liz. You're not on screen, but don't worry. Can I just say why I think it's nice to have a word from you, because Liz is in Hereford and she's an amazing champion of all things Herefordshire, and your portfolio of what I would call civic activities is rather different from some of the ones we've heard about. Can you just mention a few things that are going on where you are?
Yes, I suppose that's why I haven't said anything, because it's slightly different. But I suppose, yes, I'm all things Herefordshire. So business is rural concierge, even though I have been to visit Anthony. Hello, Anthony, down at the yarn market. Hello. So yes, I arrange sort of day trips and holidays for Herefordshire people to go out to the county. So there's that sort of community. But I also champion anything Herefordshire. So since lockdown, obviously coach trips have been a little bit quiet. So we're relaunching, well, the website's up now, Herefordshire Walking Festival. So that had a bit of a rest for a couple of years due to this, that and the other. So that'll be starting next June. So the website's herefordshirewalkingfestival.co.uk. So if you're not doing anything next June, you want a little walk, there's plenty of fresh air and space. So we're doing that, and what else am I up to? Oh, church tourism as well. So there's a heritage lottery fund that we're involved in. So it's working together with church volunteers. Excuse me, I haven't had a drink. Working together with church volunteers to promote churches in Herefordshire and Shropshire, and we're going to have a church tourism conference at the end, so October 2021, and we're also going to be doing tours and bookable experiences. So yeah, a few things of keeping us busy during lockdown.
Hi, Liz.
Hello, Anthony.
Hi, Liz. Yes.
Apples and cider yet?
Oh yes, Peter, you've got to come and try some apple. Well, it starts with apples and then ends in cider, and then it ends in, well, we'll say no more.
Liz, I tried to get a bottle of Herefordshire cider, and my other half said, no, you can't have that one. I'm having that one.
There's actually another thing that's happened during lockdown. Local sourced, and basically they bring all the sort of Herefordshire produce together. You go onto their website and you can order it. You can order it to your door, so no excuses.
Who's running that?
Oh gosh, what's his name? Chris Tippin. They're a website company working together with a food producer, so that's partnership working, and yeah, so they've got the website person. It's local letter E sourced.
Great, I'll check it out.
Oh, Anthony was waving. Hello, Anthony.
Hi, Liz. Yes, funny to hear you talking about your walking festival and everything, because we've just got the Southwest Coast Path walk coming up at the beginning of October.
Brilliant.
And then later on towards the end of October, we've got a churches weekend covering the churches in Somerset.
With Richard.
Yes.
Yes, he's
Richard
one of
Tulloch.
our partners. Yeah, he's really good. Yes.
It's a small world.
It really is a small world. And I think that's what's good about being part of this group, is the fact that, as you say, you know, we're all sort of doing our own thing in our own area, and to bring it all together and sort of, you know, best practice is really good. So thank you.
For the rest of you who might not know a little bit about Liz, I first came across her when she wanted to, she's been doing day trips and day tours for a long time, but she wanted to launch her first stay away tour for her group of contacts. And we were fortunate enough that she chose to come and stay at the Yarn Market. And it was really nice hosting Liz on her very first away tour.
Yeah, it was really good, and thank you to Anthony. You looked after us and entertained us as well. But it was really good, and I had such good feedback. And actually, the comments were, Liz, if this is your first holiday, you know, we can't wait for the rest of them. And that's been yeah, it's been quite successful ever since. So thank you, Anthony. I it's because of you, really.
I think it's
Anthony, I've got to do a name check for you as well, because you hosted a weekend. We came, Richard and I and some others came to do a bit of brainstorming about this kind of thing.
And Paul and Linda.
Yeah, and you took us out in your minibus and showed us loads of interesting things, like the Watch It. We went to Watch It, didn't we? And Richard got a contact there, and we went to, was it Ilfracombe? I can't remember where we went to. Not
I'm just going to add to that. Can you, am I got the mic? Anthony, when we went to Watch It, I'd never even heard of Watch It, but Jessica Prendergast, who is leads the Onion Collective in Watch It, is probably one of the best, I mean, literally the most innovative and like high achieving community activist in the country. And she was she'd said she would speak at this launch and talk about Watch It, and then unfortunately got in touch a couple of days ago saying you know that she couldn't do it, and she apologized. But I said we would definitely stay in touch, and she was very keen to do that. And she's actually going to open a factory on the site of the old paper mill, and it's going to be a community-owned, cooperatively owned factory making insulation for eco houses. But she, having sort of looked at what watch it needs, she realised that what watch it needed was a factory everyone could work in, because that's what everyone's used to. And it's an amazing, I mean, she's an amazing woman. I'll hand over to you now, Anthony.
Well, I think a lot of these projects of showing people around a local area is actually very beneficial to what you're all talking about. I was able to show you, Richard, and Peter, and the rest of you, places that you would never have seen yourselves. You didn't know they existed, maybe. But by actually taking you out, you've learned a little bit more about the area, how it ticks, and you can take back ideas to your other projects. And the same applies to when I took Liz out. It gave her new dimensions on what she could run. And thank you all for your support.
Well, when we put into our mix of 5 things, the idea of pride in place and local character, there are no better people to explain a place to a visitor than a local person who understands it, Anthony. And I mean, coming to stay with you, you get the bonus of all of your insight and all of your connections. I'm afraid if we'd stayed at the Premier Inn, we probably wouldn't have got some of that.
Possibly not.
I think Richard, I think we're now down to.
I think there's people. Yeah, I agree. And there's people who are too polite to leave without being formally released.
Well, I'm not
so
too impolite to leave. I'm going to leave.